We shall now go on to our last speaker, member ARC West, a very dynamic person from Mumbai, who's going to tell us actually on the most quintessential issue, the essential pre-op workup for refractive surgery. On to you, Anaga.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you for so much for this opportunity. I'll just share my screen. Is my screen visible, ma'am? And am I audible clearly?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me this opportunity on speaking on my take on essential preoperative workups in refractive surgery. In today's day of improving technologies and increasing confidence, we promise the world to our LASIK patients. But we need to remember that in order to get the best visual outcomes, we not only need to have a proper case selection and workup, but also precise surgical technique, good counseling, and excellent post-operative care. Yes, the proper workup of the patient begins right from the proper history and the age of the patient, a complete good clinical examination of the patient, and yes, the most important part is the refractive surgery workup, which includes the topography, aberrometry, pachymetry, tomography, and yes, today we have this epithelial mapping, dry eye evaluation, serum vitamin D, and in those cases where we are planning to probably use a phakic IOL instead of LASIK, then the anterior chamber depth and the white to white measurement. Definitely, we need to also rule out the systemic contraindications to prevent any further complications. And we in our center, and definitely everyone would be having some kind of a LASIK workup sheet where you not only have all the complete details of about the personal data about the patient, the ophthalmic history, as well as all the other parameters regarding the clinical evaluation and the parameters and details of the flap that we have would be doing in the intraoperative period and any events that may have happened. Needless to say, because it's a refractive surgery, the refraction has to be bang on target, and we need to look for refractive stability. Also go in and look for other old prescriptions and old glasses of the patient. Definitely cycloplegic refraction is extremely important, especially in hyperopic patients. And in those patients who are low myopes and in the pre-presbyopic age groups, it's better not to push them too much for LASIK because they already have good vision for near without glasses. Those patients who have a history of chronic contact lens wear may have peripheral neovascularization like this, which can bleed on table, and we need to be careful about it. Or they may have evidence of prior contact lens related corneal infections, and these spots could be an indication that they have these kind of infections earlier. Again, contact lenses need to be stopped at least a week before the surgery, and in case of RGP and toric, at least around 3 weeks before the surgery. Many patients could have corneal warpage like this, and they need to be stopped and look for repeated topography till the topography actually stabilizes. A detailed slit lamp examination, especially for ocular surface, is important. Rule out problems like meibomian gland dysfunction, blepharitis, and corneal dot opacities like this, which may have had probably because of an old adenoviral conjunctivitis also, and this could probably hinder a femtolaser during surgery. Even sometimes things like a pincula can actually probably come in the way of suction during a microkeratome LASIK. Definitely, we cannot overemphasize the need for a proper retinal evaluation of the periphery and need for laser treatment wherever it is required. Like Dr. Natasha mentioned, we have a dry eye evaluation definitely for all our patients, including the OSDI score, the mybography, Peabody-Shermer's test, including all the other tests also that she mentioned. And many times in our practice also, we have used the IPL treatment that we are having access to for many of these patients and stabilize the ocular surface before taking up the patient apart from the medical management. It's not just the preoperative care, but also the predictive care post LASIK that is also important. We need to avoid excessive flattening and excessive steepening of the cornea in order to prevent any night vision issues. And yes, anticipate flap complications in cases of very flat corneas or very steep corneas. Definitely, the ectasia risk factor scoring system by Randleman comes in handy, and we need to remember to keep at least 300 microns in the residual stromal bed. Be very wary of corneas that are less than 500 microns. And definitely, in case of very high myopes, it would be prudent to go in for a phakic IOL rather than go ahead with LASIK. PTA already Dr. Namrata Madam has alluded to, and this definitely we keep less than 40%. There are times where you may have a mild to moderate myopia with a good pachy and you may be tempted to go in. There are many other centers in the periphery or in the rural areas where they may not have had access to tomography. But even with the basic topography, we need to look for red flags like this in inferior steepening like this. And sometimes even the pathfinder can give you very, very small points like a difference in the inferior superior keratometric value of more than 1.4, or a vertical coma, or even if the patient is not actually accepting the entire cylinder that is in the manifest refraction, that could be a red flag. Definitely tomography has to be very, very important and is the most critical part of the workup. I've been using the Pentacam. You may also use the Sirius or the Galili, whichever you have access to. It gives you the sagittal curvatures and the front and the back elevation and the global pachymetry map, which is so essential. The other factors that can be or could be red flags are the SRAX, which may be more than 22 degrees. Look for the thinnest pachymetric, not be less than 480. The Y coordinate of the thinnest location, and if there's a difference between the topographic and manifest astigmatism of more than 15 degrees or more than 1 diopters, it could be a red flag. Also, a superior inferior difference in 30 microns or the posterior corneal elevation of more than 18 microns should be a red flag. The BAD-D display is very easy to read because of the color coding. So the exclusion map as well as the difference map inferiorly gives you a very good indication of early ectasia. And here, definitely these are gross indicators. The CTSP and the PTI curves also should be looked at. And if there is a deviation from the normal, it has to be considered as keratoconus. And look for all the high risk and the moderate risks. Also, the inter-eye corneal symmetry has to be looked at. And definitely these cases should not be taken up for LASIK. Integration of the biomechanical assessment along with the tomography is important. So you have the CBI as well as the TBI index, and the combination of these two will have definitely help in detecting ectasia in all these patients. Epithelial mapping for subclinical keratoconus has been used nowadays, and you can see it by seeing that there is a change in the epithelial map, thinning at the tip of the cone and thickening in the periphery. OSD also, you can see the epithelial mapping. There is a classification of the type of dry eye. And in cases of especially PRK, where you can actually see the change in the epithelial map as the patient recovers in the next few months. Pupillometry can be done to decide the optimum optic zone size. And in very large pupils, it could probably indicate that the patient would have greater dysphotopsia post-treatment. Angle kappa is so important, especially in hyperopic treatments. And in these cases, you need to actually center the treatment on the corneal vertex. Counseling plays a very, very important role. Give them realistic expectations and a brief about the potential complications and various other options as and when required. For example, one of these patients had borderline Pachy of 500, and in the right eye had a very high myopia. We did a phakic IOL in the right eye, and this is the post LASIK topography in the left eye, which shows the central ablation. What I want to tell here is this is the post surgical aberrometry, and it shows that the higher order aberrations are comparable. And last but not the least, prevent related errors, ensure that correct data is fed, good fluence test, and explain the procedure to the patient. So to conclude, the keys to success is refractive surgery is all about more and more care. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
That was wonderful, Anaga. I just covered everything in that 5 minutes, everything which was necessary, and it was very enjoyable hearing you. Are there any questions before we conclude? Dr. Praveen?
At least from the audience panel, looks like there are no more questions that are pending.
Oh, good. So I think I'll conclude then. I'm sure all of us know it's been one amazing webinar with so many stalwarts and their thoughts, which has been of great relevance. My very special thanks to every dear expert panel we've been lucky to have amidst us. Our charged, fantastic set of speakers and outstanding co-moderator to run the show, Dr. Praveen. Our admin team headed by Kripal, our ever helpful Mr. Sunil, who's the webinar admin, Sai and Manjula from Numerotech, who have always been there with their great guidance and support. My very strong ARC team, Mr. Nikhil and Mr. Raman from Entode, for their steadfast commitment to sponsor every single event of ARC, and one and all of you who are still remaining in this dear audience, because it's your presence which encourages us to take steps forward with great energy each time. Thank you, one and all of you. Thank you.